go back and get subsequent approval for that travel, provided that the money would still be in line with us, not going over our travel budget.
Are you indicating by that verbiage that you had no intention to exceed your budget at that time?
That's correct.
You weren't going to ask for additional monies to travel to Germany, were you?
No, sir.
In fact, in your next sentence, you discussed pursuing a grant for Innovate Anderson. Tell me, what would that process entail?
It's the same process I went through for the trip to China. I just went before the board and asked them that they contribute from their private sector funds monies to the Economic Development Office so that I could travel.
Underneath the scenario of your traveling to Germany, would you ever have any intention of asking County Council to allocate any additional funds beyond what had already been budgeted for you in that fiscal year?
No, sir.
In fact, you never spent any money to go to Germany, did you?
I still have never been, no, sir.
Can you look at Exhibit 6 for me?
Yes, sir.
Is that the memorandum that you referred to earlier in relation to the proposed trip to Germany?
Yes, sir.
Do you know whether you ever actually sent this memorandum to Mr. Preston?
I know I never got it signed, and all of the other stuff that was going on, I don't know if I just didn't send it to him or if he just never signed it.
But you don't recall ever receiving a signed copy of this memorandum back?
No, I don't.
And you never traveled to Germany, did you?
I did not, sir.
Would you look at Exhibit 12 for me?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
When was Exhibit 12 dated?
If you're referring to the page 1,
Yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, sorry.
November 26th,
November 26th of 2008.
I'm sorry, yes.
Is that an email from you to Mr. Preston?
It is.
Does it say, subject, school memo for file?
Yes, sir.
As of November 26th of 2008, are you asking Mr. Preston to consider signing a memorandum regarding reimbursables for tuition from the county?
No, sir, I'm not asking for anything to be reimbursed.
Are you trying to ask Mr. Preston to memorialize terms and conditions of your already existing employment contract?
Yes, sir.
What were those terms and conditions that you were trying to get Mr. Preston to memorialize?
Specifically, I was trying to get him to memorialize the use of a county vehicle as an assigned take-home vehicle, as well as the reimbursable expenses at 100%, which differed from the county SAPP, which was 80%.
Were those terms and conditions that you had already negotiated with the county at the time of your hire?
Yes, sir.
Were you asking the county to provide you with any additional benefits with respect to your employment as of November 26th of 2008?
No, sir.
Is it your understanding that previously there were memoranda in your employment file that actually reflected those terms and conditions?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that those memoranda were missing for some reason or another?
Yeah, I don't know why, but they were not there.
Was that the purpose behind your preparing the memoranda to replace the obviously missing memoranda?
That's correct.
Is that the reason why these memoranda, or certain versions of them, of the memoranda, are dated October 16th of 2006?
That is the exact reason.
Is that in fact the date you were hired?
Yes.
And the reason why the memoranda reflect the date you were hired was because they are simply meant to memorialize what the terms and conditions were of your employment contract as of that date.
Yes, sir.
Were you ever provided any reimbursement with respect to continuing learning classes as contemplated by the memorandum reflected in Exhibit 12?
No, sir.
Were you ever provided any such reimbursements ever?
No, sir.
Did you ever accrue any material benefit with respect to having that term and condition as part of your employment contract?
No, sir.
Did the county at any time expend any funds with respect to reimbursing you for tuition incurred with respect to continuing learning classes as contemplated by the memorandum in Exhibit 12?
No, sir.
Can you look at Exhibit 9 for me?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Does this memorandum reflect the terms and conditions that you negotiated with respect to the use of the county car during your tenure as the Assistant County Administrator for Economic Development?
Negotiated and had been following since that time of my hire.
Was that a part of the terms and conditions of your employment when you were hired back in October of 2006?
That's correct.
Is it your understanding that previously a memorandum existed in your personnel file that actually reflected those terms and conditions?
That was my understanding.
And for some reason, that memorandum was no longer there after Mr. Preston had agreed to leave the county?
That's my understanding, yes.
When did you first receive a vehicle from the county?
I received a temporary, if you will, vehicle about, I think it was a week after I started, give or take a few days. That was an older vehicle that particular department used, and they went out for procurement. Robert Carroll's office went out under the state procurement, and we went to a state dealership in December, and they purchased the vehicle that I drove from that point on. So it was, I got a vehicle almost immediately, but I got the vehicle that I continued to drive 2 months after my employment, or higher, sorry.
Was that in December of 2006?
That's correct.
Was December of 2006 the first time that you began using the vehicle that the county actually purchased for you to use in your role as the Assistant County Administrator for Economic Development?
The one that they purchased for me, yes.
What type of vehicle was that?
It was an SUV. It was a Yukon.
Why would the Assistant County Administrator in charge of Economic Development need such a vehicle?
We often picked up, at least monthly, picked up people from GSP or sometimes even Hartsville and Atlanta, and transported them with their luggage from the airport. We also had folks drive into the county that we had to take out in the fields and pastures and whatnot, so we needed four-wheel drive. We also needed the capacity to hold large numbers of people in without them having to climb over one another, and it needed to be reliable. And the vehicle that we were using prior to my coming continued to break down on the staff.
Did you continuously use that vehicle for the balance of 2006?
Which vehicle?
The SUV that the county purchased for you.
I used it from the time I got it in December until I departed the county in 2009.
But you continuously used it in 2006, correct? Until from December of 2006 to the end of December of 2006?
For the approximate 30-day time frame, I did use that.
And you used it for the entirety of 2007?
I did.
And you used it for the entirety of 2008?
I did.
And when did you leave in 2009?
I was put on leave with pay in July, and I actually turned the vehicle in that day, the next day of my own will.
So you continuously used it through July of 2009?
Like the end of July.
And by that point, Mr. Preston had already left the county for approximately 7 or 8 months?
Correct.
Did you get charged on your W-2s for use of the county vehicle?
Yes, sir, each year.
Each and every year, your W-2s reflected your personal use of the county vehicle, did it not?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you look at what we were previously looking at as Exhibit 9, does Exhibit 9 reflect the terms and conditions of your employment contract with respect to the use of the county vehicle as negotiated back in October of 2006?
Yes, sir.
Does the memorandum in Exhibit 9 reflect what was your consistent usage of the county vehicle in 2006, 2007, 2008, and parts of 2009?
Yes, sir.
Does the memorandum reflect Exhibit 9 conferring a new benefit on you?
No, sir.
Does the memorandum in Exhibit 9 reflect what had been terms and conditions of your employment contract dating back to October 16th of 2006?
Yes, sir.
Did the county incur any new liability by virtue of the memorandum reflected on Exhibit 9?
No, sir.
That was part of the deal from the beginning, wasn't it?
It was.
With respect to Exhibit 13,
Okay.
do you know with any degree of certainty on which date, what specific date Mr. Preston actually signed this document?
No, sir.
Do you know with any degree of certainty that the date on which Mr. Preston signed the memorandum that related to your use of the county vehicle?
No, sir.
Can you look at Exhibit 7?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Does Exhibit 7 reflect a laundry list of cleanup items that needed to be done before Mr. Preston's departure?
Yes.
Isn't that what that is?
That's exactly what that is.
And item number 3 on Exhibit 7, which was skipped over, is the one that says memos for HSJ's file array education and vehicle use, does it not?
Yes, sir.
Are you HSJ as reflected in that email?
Heather Simmons Jones. Yes, sir.
And this is an email from you to Mr. Preston dated November 26, 2008, is it not?
Yes, sir, it is.
And the purpose of this is to ensure that the items that we knew which were in existence, any problem, would be taken care of before Mr. Preston left, correct?
Correct.
Are you surprised that an outgoing county administrator would have certain administrative paperwork things that needed cleaned up prior to his departure?
I was one myself, and no, I'm not surprised.
Do other people in economic development staffs around the state from other counties, do they get use of cars? Is that a common thing?
I would say so, 90% of them.
You would say approximately 90% do?
Yes.
And you were part of that 90%, weren't you?
Obviously, yes.
Can I ask you to look at Exhibit 14 for me?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Is this the top, the first page of Exhibit 14 is dated November 26th of 2008. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Does this document relate to the school memorandum that we had just discussed?
Yes.
Is that the memorandum that discusses the reimbursement for certain tuition costs that you would have during continuing learning sessions related to your employment with the county?
It's the exact same document previously discussed and regarding the prior document vehicle use with the change title.
In looking at page 2, the one that's base stamp PLF 00865, and it says Ray, that's where you were referring to where you changed the actual the actual regarding education and reimbursement, correct?
Yes, sir.
But prior to your ability to submit the revised version to Mr. Preston, he had already executed the prior one, did he not?
He did. My assumption is that in our interoffice envelope, it must have changed. Because I wrote this and then I get at some point the document and he had already done the old one, so there wasn't really any need to make him fix it.
And you said an earlier version of the memorandum reflected on page 2 of Exhibit 14.
Yes, sir.
You did have a typographical error in the regarding section.
Yes, sir.
Did it relate to the county vehicle instead of educational reimbursement?
The regarding line,
Right.
still said county vehicle. The text of the memorandum was the same.
So what you did was, I understand correctly, you went and back and you corrected that typo.
Correct.
Did you insert educational reimbursement to reflect what the actual memorandum was about?
I did.
Prior to your ability to submit that to Mr. Preston, however, he had already executed the one with the typographical error.
Correct.
When did you submit the memorandum that had the change on it? Is that reflected on page 1 of Exhibit 14?
I don't remember.
Does page 1 of Exhibit 14 reflect a modification date?
It says modified Wednesday, November 26, 2008 at 2:03:56 p.m.
I'd like to ask you, and I promise that I'm winding down, and Ms. Talley probably will have some follow-up questions, but I don't know that. When you go on economic development trips, what percentage of trips results in a concrete economic development deal?
I'm laughing because I just authored faith in the state newspaper about that subject matter. It is a very slim amount of times. I don't think that I ever have left an economic development trip with a sealed deal in hand. The governor recently received some criticism about that same question. Economic development is a team sport, but it is a very lengthy process. And so to say, did you receive a deal in China and Canada at said trip is really an unrealistic metric for travel in that regard. I think you have to look at economic development over the time, over the years that you've created those relationships and continued to grow them.
Is it more appropriate to evaluate economic development over a long period of time as opposed to a trip-by-trip basis?
It is.
Is that because a fairly low number of economic development trips actually manifest themselves into a concrete immediate deal?
That is correct.
When you go on these economic development trips, do you network?
Absolutely.
Do you meet people in respective industries that may be attractive for development in Anderson County?
Sure, that's why you hope to go.
Do those connections that you make frequently pan out, so to speak, in unforeseen ways later?
Yes, and sometimes you don't even know. I mean, that person may never reveal the first time they heard of Anderson County was at said conference. I mean, there's really no exact science in that part.
If you don't go fishing, so to speak, metaphorically, at those conferences, you can't catch the fish, right?
It's a lot more difficult to sit behind your desk and wait.
If Mr. McAbee had a view that the Economic Development Board should be more proactive, well, first of all, did he ever express that view to you?
Yes.
Why did he think the Economic Development Board should be more proactive?
Well, I can only assume, that he wanted it to be more proactive because he didn't like just being in an advisory capacity, that he felt like maybe we could do more in the county. But I don't remember him ever saying specifically to me why he wanted it to be more proactive.
Do you have any reason to believe that Mr. McAbee's view that the Economic Development Board should be proactive was incorrect or an improper one for some reason?
No, it's just a different direction.
Earlier, we were discussing the rail line in the Belton area. What is Belton's proximity to Interstate I-85?
Maybe 10, I don't know.
Do you have any reason to believe that Amy Plummer and Bill McAbee ever obtained any personal leads on economic development projects from their connection to economic development?
From the information that was provided at meetings, is that?
No, I mean in their travels. Did they ever procure personal leads on projects from their connection with economic development?
I guess the instance would be to find if they received something on Lincoln Oil, and I don't know that.
Any other instances you can think of besides Lincoln Oil?
That's the only project that came to fruition that they were involved in during my tenure. So I think that's the only one that I can speak to unless I'm forgetting something.
Do you know whether Mr. McAbee was on the Economic Development Board prior to becoming a council member?
It's my understanding that he was.
Are you aware of any other council members who were previously members of the Economic Development Board?
Only as I stated earlier that there were usually 2 designated as ex officios to the advisory board. So those varied from time to time. Mr. McAbee, it's my understanding, actually served on the development board as an advisory board member, solely as a board member prior to his being elected to the term of council, if that is quite clear.
Do you recall Mr. McAfee ever telling you that he felt that all members of the Economic Development Board should attend SCED?
He did.
Did you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, that the members of the board as well as members of the county council, that's what it's created for, is to give those people on grassroots level at the home front a better understanding so they can support their local developers and make decisions outside of the little vacuum of their own community in a more worldly perspective.
Plaintiff's Exhibit 16, email from Jones to Preston, September 7th, 2006, was marked for identification. And this is Ms. Perrin examining again. I just handed you what I think is Exhibit 15, and it looks like an email from you to Mr. Preston prior to your employment with the county. Is that correct?
That's what it looks like,
And in this email, you refer to your letter of acceptance with a summary of your offering and other due clarifications. There's nothing attached to this exhibit, but can you summarize what was attached to the best of your memory?
I had a week cruise planned, and it was literally like 2 weeks after I was to start my job, so that was one of the things I knew was in there, that it was okay for me to go ahead and take that, because at that point, I would not have accrued leave for a week yet, my salary. I would assume that I went ahead at that point and also talked about the educational components as well as the vehicular use and start date. I know what else. I think Mr. Preston wanted to do maybe like a mutual announcement with my current employer. So it's more like everyone's happy for Heather as opposed to it being negative with me leaving Beaufort. So I think I had made mention that we had kind of a concerted departure.
You testified in response to Mr. Davis's question that you understood a memorandum to be in your file that supported giving you use of the vehicle as well as an educational reimbursement.
Correct.
Did you ever see that memorandum?
I did not.
Can you say for certain that it existed?
I cannot say for certain.
If you look at Exhibit 7, can you confirm whether or not any of the laundry, quote-unquote, laundry list of activities, as Mr. Davis characterized it, was completed before December 1st, 2008?
I can't tell when those things were. I mean, you mean, well, define completed for me, because do you mean like that he signed off on them, or?
Can you confirm for certain that he took any action on that laundry list of activities before December 1st, 2008?
I cannot confirm. The only one that I would say that I could probably confirm is the educational school memo, where I had obviously gotten it before his signed signature on the one that I messed up on before the new one got to him on the 26th. But that's really the only one that I can, have any kind of specifics about.
Do you recall receiving the signed memorandum about the educational assistance before December 1st, 2008?
I don't remember the date that I received it.
Is it conceivable that Mr. Preston received both memoranda, the one with the subject line that referred to
vehicle,
and the second memo that referred to educational assistance as you corrected it, received both of them, the memoranda, and left them on his desk for a number of days, and then picked up the one that he did in fact sign and signed it after December 1st, 2008? Mr. Davis objected to the form.
I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I can't say definitively yes, that happened, or definitively no, that didn't happen.
I guess my point is it possible that he received both memoranda but didn't execute the one with the inaccuracy until after December 1st, 2008?
I guess it's conceivable.
You were a county administrator of Allendale County, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you ever backdate any documents?
I don't believe I did or had a need to.
Do you believe that's appropriate?
I believe to memorialize something that had already been promised, and in this case, word was given. It was a memorialization. It was not an accrual of any benefit, so I don't think in that case it's wrong. Would I have a different opinion about a different scenario? Possibly, yes.
Can you give us the circumstances of your departure from the county?
The letter that I received in the mail said, lack of trust in my ability to work with the current county council.
You received that letter, I guess, shortly before August of 2009?
Actually, in August of 2009.
Are you currently employed?
No.
And what are the circumstances of your departure from your most recent employer?
The SUTA taxes, the unemployment taxes, SUTA, SUTA. My former employer, and I was employed until 2 weeks ago, has a temporary agency attached to their services, and they are increasing their unemployment insurance. It went from about $130,000 to in excess of $650,000, and they have had dissolved part of their business development division, and they gave me 6 months of on-site. I continued to work. They gave me 6 months' notice.
Defendant's Exhibit 19, email from Jones to Preston, November 26, 08, was marked for identification. This is examination by Mr. Davis. Does what has been marked as Exhibit 19 reflect that laundry list of to-do items that I spoke about earlier during my questions?
At the bottom in it does, yes.
And does Mr. Preston respond to your to-do list directly above?
We'll take care of it Friday.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's what he says.
Does Mr. Preston send an email to you on Wednesday, November 26, 2008 at 4:34 p.m. in response to your subject to-do list and say, and I quote, "Okay, we'll take care of it Friday," end quote?
That's what it says.
And just for clarity, for purposes of the record, that was Wednesday, November 26th, so Thursday would be November 27th, and the Friday that he's referring to is Friday, November 28th of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And what he's going to take care of is the to-do list referenced in your email down below, correct?
Yes, that's what it states.
In reference, one more question, in reference to Exhibit 19 that Mr. Davis just entered into the record, so this is a question from Ms. Kern. Although Mr. Preston said he would take care of it Friday, do you know for certain if he did?
Again, I have no knowledge of the date. I mean, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 items there. I can't tell you if they were all completed.
And in fact, he did not send the memorandum to Phyllis until December 1st, 2008, correct? Mr. Davis objected before.
That's what it says on the sticky note.
Do you have any reason to believe that he sent the memorandum to Phyllis about the vehicle and your educational assistance prior to December 1st, 2008?
I have no clue.
Completes publication.
Thank you. Stood down.
Your Honor, do you want the original transcript to stand up at this time?
That'd be fine.
In addition, just for the record's sake, the documents referred to in that exchange that are pre-admitted and not objected to are here. I'll just hand those up. And there were two, I think, that were objected to. I'll let you deal with those.
Thank you.